On Overdrive today, we pit the Tata Nexon EV and the Mahindra XUV400 Pro against each other to find out which of these is the best family EV you can buy in the country today. We also find out what makes the Toyota Rumion more attractive than its identical sibling, the Maruti Suzuki Ertiga. Hello and welcome to Overdrive. I am Soini Dutt. The Mahindra XUV400 and the Tata Nexon EV are the two only viable options if you're looking in the market for an electric family hatchback. So between the two, which one is a better option, considering the Nexon EV is now a lot more impressive? So let's start this comparison. First, we're talking about safety as well as features.
The Nexon EV in its latest form has undergone quite a transformation, enough for us to come back and see how it stacks up against its closest rival, the Mahindra XUV400, which in its latest form is also packing quite a few significant changes. Just like the last time we drove these two EVs, we came away impressed by the presence of the Mahindra XUV400. The Mahindra is a size larger than the Tata and it does seem to count. Its flatter, blocky look gives you the presence you might want when you choose an SUV. The snazzy copper highlights also bring more attention to the XUV400. While we think LED lighting should have been offered at this price, the plug motifs in the rear lighting are a neat touch. The XUV400 is also the more practical car. It has 200 mm of ground clearance against the Nexon EV's 190 mm, while the placement of the charging port may be more useful too. Unlike many EVs, both give you a spare wheel, but the Mahindra's longer length adds to the boot space as well, giving you 378 litres against the Tata's 350 litres, although the Nexon EV does have a lower lip. But it's the Tata Nexon EV that catches your eye first. It's more than just a regular facelift, with the new bonnet and front fenders fitting in with the much sharper front. The full-width DRLs make these new Tata cars instantly recognizable and is well tempered by the fairly discreet lighting. Specific to the Nexon EV are the chrome strakes in the air dam. These extensive changes seem to gel well with the existing bodywork. The rear is again notably refreshed with the sharp theme of the front. There are some changes to the bumper too that match the front, the vertical reflectors being the most noticeable. Now the modern minimalistic theme that you saw on the outside of the Nexon EV, that's carried over on the inside too. And to start with, you now have a fully different center stack here. And really, even with the last Nexon EV, we liked the play of materials and textures, and that continues here as well. So you have this really quite nice carbon fiber-like finish. These vents, the new ones, in the way that they work, they're also quite hefty. So in that sense, it feels a bit more modern. It feels like the car that you want it to be at a price of over rupees 20 lakhs. And compared to this, the XUV400 feels a bit more simple. There have been changes to it also. You have a few more gloss black elements. The center stack in the way that it's designed, it is a bit more contemporary, but this really does feel even more contemporary in that sense. There's a more modern vibe to the space with the two-spoke steering and capacitive touch panels for the climate controls. But there is a price to pay in terms of ease of use. The Mahindra XUV400 on the other hand feels more traditional with its greater use of beige, a sense that continues with the more rounded surfaces, while the steering wheel, which feels almost as nice to hold as the Nexon EV, gets more traditional buttons that are easier to use on the move. A highlight in both is the rich leatherette upholstery and contrast stitching. The XUV400 is more practical on the inside too. The Nexon EV's central tunnel has been reworked. The new gear selector and switches here feel nicer to use, but you still don't get cup holders. The wireless charger is also more logically placed on the Mahindra, while there are deeper storage bins here too. The Nexon EV has a large glove box, but the Mahindra holds more things more securely in its doors. But with this update, Tata now has a notable advantage over the Mahindra on the tech front, a key consideration among the quite aware buyers of these EVs. Both now get 10.25-inch driver displays, but it's the one the Tata that is easier to use. The colors are more vibrant and it's more logically laid out, although both could do with larger fonts for key information. The XUV400 also gets a neat navigation display here, but the Nexon EV goes further by projecting Google Maps from your phone pairing here directly. The Nexon EV's advantage continues with the main central touchscreen, larger at 12.3 inches compared to the also new 10.25-inch one in the XUV400. Aside from the larger size and both employing modern widget-based home screens, the Tata screen is again the easier one to use with its sharper touch responses and more intuitive sub-menus. You also get quite a bit more connectivity like the Arcade.ev suite of streaming apps. Both also give you Alexa integration as well as wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. But it must be said that in terms of outright space, and if that's your number one priority, then look no further than the XUV400 because this is a significantly larger car than the Nexon EV. And that shows here. The wheelbase itself is 105 mm longer, and you really do notice that it's also slightly wider. So immediately you notice you have quite a bit more knee and legroom. You can tuck your feet in under the front seats in both. So yeah, in terms of space, 3 adults together fit more easily here, even though both have a central hump. Here, because of the width of the seat and just the contouring of it, the seats in the Nexon EV have been reprofiled to sort of carve out more legroom. This really is a step ahead of the Nexon EV. Now in terms of amenities here, you get a center console in both cars. And now with this update, the XUV400 also gets rear AC vents and a Type-C charger. But in the Nexon EV, considering its very strong focus on tech, you get 45-watt charging for both front and back. Both SUVs here will give you auto headlamps and wipers, wireless charging, a single pane sunroof, 60-40 split back seats and connected tech. The Mahindra also gets dual zone climate control, but the Nexon EV has quite an edge with ventilated seats, 9-speaker JBL audio with sound mode, PM 2.5 air filter, full LED lighting and a new age V2V V2L charging function. Even though both get 6 airbags, ESC, rear disc brakes, TPMS and hill hold, the Nexon EV goes further with hill descent control and a neat 360-degree camera setup with blind view monitor. Having said that, the XUV400 stopped at a shorter distance in our braking test by just over 2 meters.
Well, we're just midway through this comparison test, but on the other side, we will be talking more about the battery size, performance, the charge cycles, and also the pricing of these two EVs. Stay with us, you're watching Overdrive. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. We're still in the midst of comparing the new Nexon EV to the Mahindra XUV400 Pro. And now using real life data of performance as well as test figures, we'll tell you which of these electric vehicles is perfect for your family.
Now the Nexon also gets a completely new motor, and at first glance it's a bit outgunned by the XUV400 with its 145 PS and about 250 Newton meters of torque, and the XUV is notably more, 150 PS, and the torque is significantly more at about 310 Newton meters. But you'll be surprised that when we put it to the test with our testing equipment, the two cars are actually very close by. Now this seems to have a lot to do with how these two cars put their power down. XUV400, it gives you that sense of speed. There's no eco mode like earlier, so you just have that fast, fun and fearless mode. But you also now have ESC, which is a big new addition, and that does rein in this car's performance quite a bit. It sort of makes it more manageable in that sense. And yes, even still at hard acceleration, you do notice that in the XUV400, you can still tend to see that it spins up its wheels quite a bit. That can be a bit unnerving if you are a new driver, but you won't drive it like that more often than not. So in that sense, the EVs after all, so you would expect them to drive broadly similarly with that really good initial torque and then just performance that keeps going up to say close to 100 kmph. So in that sense, the XUV is better. The Nexon now does not limit performance in any of the modes. It just limits responses, where the XUV, aside from limiting speed, it also limits torque in the lowest mode. Is the kind of refinement that you feel through the drivetrain. The steering is now lighter in the way that the throttle feels a bit more precise. The brakes, they are a bit more linear. In that sense, you have a greater sense of just stability, a sense of mass in the car, which really is quite reassuring. Not much has changed mechanically in terms of the batteries with both cars. The Nexon EV continues with its 40.5 kWh LFP pack, and the XUV400 with its 39.5 kWh NiMH chemistry. That said, the Nexon EV is now 2% more aerodynamically efficient with the design changes, and it also carries a more efficient cooling system, aside from the significance of a new motor altogether. This has led to it gaining a notable edge over the XUV400 in real-world range from the last time we tested these two EVs, despite the ARAR number being not too different. So the Tata will now give you 298 km of overall range in the real world against 267 km in the Mahindra. This difference remains largely consistent in both city and highway driving situations. The Tata's paddle-operated regen modes as well as the eco mode help squeeze out more miles, and the cooling advantages have let it now match the effect of the L single pedal mode in the Mahindra. For this test, we largely drove the Nexon EV in its eco mode at level 2 regen and in the calmest fast mode for the XUV400. Although another hindrance for the Mahindra is the 90 km/h speed limit in this mode, which meant we often had to switch modes on the highway to get it closer to our testing speed, further depleting energy. The regen modes in the Nexon EV are also well judged. At level 2, it feels the closest to the engine braking effect in an ICE car. The L mode in the Mahindra is still the closest we've seen a mainstream car get to single pedal driving, which can make life easier once you get the hang of it. In its highest regen level, the Tata slows right down to a 6 km/h crawl, which is more traditional feeling. One of the XUV400's strongest suits is its ride quality. Now for an EV, it really is surprising how supple the ride is. So broken patches, there's never that sort of underlying firmness that you notice in pretty much most EVs. That is very well controlled. Now the Nexon has continued to take that slightly different approach, so it's still fairly firm setup, and when the road is smooth you don't notice it too much. You have that nice sense of solidity, but again over rough patches you do feel like you're being moved around a bit. Sharper speed breakers, you feel them in the cabin, so in that sense it could be a bit more comfortable in that respect. The XUV400 here, you do notice quite a bit of body movement from side to side for an EV, and you also do notice vertical movements, which is not very comfortable in that sense, even if you aren't driving too hard. There's not much to choose between the two EVs in terms of charging speeds. Both can DC fast charge at up to 50 kW. The XUV is slightly quicker to get from 10 to 80% in 50 minutes, while the Nexon EV takes 56 minutes. The Mahindra is also quicker to charge via a 3.3 kW AC home charger, taking 13.5 hours against the Tata's 15 hours. But the Tata is quicker with a 7.2 kW charger that comes as standard with these top spec models, taking 6 hours against Mahindra's 6.5 hours. Priced at Rs 18.78 lakh, the Mahindra XUV400's biggest draw is its price, given the Tata Nexon EV costs Rs 20.45 lakh, both for these top-end versions. This makes it great value, helped by the purposeful enhancements that have been made inside the cabin. It's now closer than ever between these two. The Tata Nexon EV is staying ahead by way of its superior efficiency, its more modern tech, and better driving characteristics.
Well, it's time to head into our final break here on the show, but coming up on the other side, we'll tell you why the Toyota Rumion seems to be a better value for money proposition than its identical sibling, the Maruti Suzuki Ertiga. Stay with us, you're watching Overdrive. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. Maruti Suzuki Ertiga has seen immense success ever since it stepped foot in the Indian market, and now it faces some family feud in the name of Toyota. Now, Toyota has rebadged the car and has added it to its portfolio. Here's Kenneth with more.
Today I have with me a 7-seater MPV, which you're already pretty familiar with, as its fraternal twin has been on sale in India for the longest time. This is not the Maruti Suzuki Ertiga, it's the Toyota Rumion. Yet another product Toyota has borrowed from the Suzuki garage under their existing alliance. The two cars are just as different as night and later that night. So without any further ado, let me quickly tell you why you should consider the Rumion if you're in the market for a 3-row family-friendly vehicle.
There's very little that separates the Rumion from the Ertiga in terms of appearance. The easiest way though is that Toyota badge at the front. Even the front grille that bears the weight of that badge is different. It's inspired by the Innova Krista, and the silver rim around it is quite a neat touch. The front bumper is new as well, and so are the 15-inch alloy wheels, which do look more attractive than the ones on the Ertiga. From the rear though, the two cars are identical, and the only way to tell them apart is by their badging. So if the two cars are so similar, why does the Rumion exist?
The Toyota Innova has been a huge success for the brand ever since the car was launched in 2005. Better known for its affordability and reliability, the car was easily the best in its segment to carry 6 to 7 people around in. Fast forward to 2024, the car has skyrocketed in prices, leaving a huge number of Toyota customers still demanding a 3-row MPV, which is also affordable. Now that's what the Rumion's playing field is.
On the inside, the Rumion is even more identical to its Suzuki twin than on the outside. In fact, take away that Toyota logo on the steering wheel and you have yourself an Ertiga. The 7-inch touchscreen, the analog gauge cluster, the fake wood panel across the dash, and even the beige color seats are all very familiar. The middle row is quite comfortable with roof-mounted aircon vents, big windows, and the 40-60 split bench even slides ahead to give additional space for the people in the third. Speaking of the third row, it's easily accessible, and while head and legroom are compromised, it's still good enough for children and shorter adults, even if meant for a slightly longer journey.
So powering this Toyota Rumion is the 1.5-litre 4-cylinder that produces about 103 PS and 139 Newton meters of torque. Now that can either be mated to a 5-speed manual or this 6-speed automatic. First things first, do not expect this powertrain to be sporty in any aspect. It's got a rather more composed and relaxed way of delivering its power. It's extremely easy to drive around city, and the engine does not demand too many throttle inputs either. Although we did notice a few jolts in the transmission, especially while maneuvering at slower speeds and while taking U-turns. Speaking of the ride quality, the suspension does a fantastic job ironing out those big potholes that you would encounter in a city like Mumbai. The Rumion is also a great highway cruiser and is also capable of delivering when the road gets a bit tricky. Although we wouldn't recommend you pushing this around corners as there is a considerable amount of body roll.
Yes, the Rumion is more pricey than the Ertiga. While the Ertiga starts from 10.12 lakh rupees on road Mumbai, the Rumion on the other hand starts from 12.33 lakhs. But variant for variant, the Ertiga is only about 60 to 80,000 rupees more affordable than its Toyota counterpart.
So if I was in the market for a 3-row affordable MPV, I would be torn between the Rumion and the Ertiga. But here's what I would consider. India being a price-sensitive market, the Rumion commands about 70,000 rupees more than the equivalent variant of that Ertiga. But here's what you get for the extra price. The Ertiga comes with a standard 2-year warranty of 40,000 kilometers, which can be extended up to 5 years or 1 lakh kilometers. This Rumion, on the other hand, comes with a standard 3-year warranty or 1 lakh kilometers, which can be further extended up to 5 years or 2,20,000 kilometers. Personally, I would take this over that just for the warranty.
Well, that's all the time we had on this week's show of Overdrive. But remember, you can stay in touch with the team through our various social media platforms, and you can write to us on Instagram as well. We'll see you next week. Until then, drive and ride safe.